Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us this this evening for an interesting session that we are going to have this evening. I would like to welcome you all, and I think we have a very good attendance for this evening. So let us go through the housekeeping first, and then we'll introduce our presenters for this evening. Please make sure that your mics are muted during the session. So we want to get the maximum out of this session. So please make sure that your mics are muted. And if there's time, then we will allow people to ask questions or whatever, at the end. Turn your view to the speaker's view. Only one speaker at a time. If, as I said, if we have time, if we allow people to comment or to ask questions directly, then make sure that only one people at a time. And you can choose to keep your camera on and off. This session will be recorded, so if you don't want to be recorded, so you have the option, to keep it off. We recommend to have your questions in the chat room. My colleague Valentine will be helping on that, so he will be taking the questions, and then he will manage the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And we might lock the meeting after 20 minutes from the start for security reasons. So with that, I would like to welcome our presenters for this evening. We have Niall Keogh from Jensen Hughes Consulting here in Qatar. Niall, welcome to IOSH Qatar. Niall is a chartered engineer with a number of engineering qualifications and extensive experience in fire and life safety consulting. He has over 20 years of experience working as a fire engineer in Ireland and Qatar, involving in both prospective and performance-based fire and life safety designs. He has experience in multitude of performance-based fire safety design and projects, including airports, stadium, metro, commercial, mixed-use residential, apartments, and so forth. Niall has a broad knowledge in a number of international well-known codes and standards, including NFPA and British standards. So I think we are privileged to have you here with us.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Yeah,
thank you for the warm introduction.
Yeah, and we have Kevin Pollitt. I think most of you you have met him before in this Irish platform. He has been active for some of our sessions already. Kevin is an HSE director and HSE system specialist with a number of years of experience in the Middle East. He's an onshore and offshore oil and gas processing facility expert. He is highly experienced in managing and leading teams responsible for delivering and managing safety systems and safety management systems and so forth. He has a good experience in technical procedure reviews, and he managed and led teams of incident management systems, conducting investigation, root cause analysis, and so forth. We have a couple of other consultants from the same consultancy. We have Murat Ozer with us as well. He is an expert in this field, and we have Amir. And I think we are so kind of privileged and overwhelmed to have this number of expertise this evening with us. So we would like to make use of this, and I know that the topic is so important to all of us. And we keep telling people that this issue of the fire and life safety is not only, whenever we talk about fire and life safety, we are not talking only about our work, we are talking about our life, we are talking about our homes, we are talking about our families. We need to make sure that we understand these things properly, wherever we are, however we are driving on the road, we are in the shopping malls, wherever. This issue of the fire and life safety is there, and we need to make sure that we are aware of it, and we are helping our families, ourselves, and others as well. So please join me to welcome the team. Niall, Kevin. Welcome.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Ahmed,
Welcome.
for the warm introduction.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Really appreciate
Really
it.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, should I share my screen now, Ahmed?
Yes, sure. You can share.
Okay, right. Hang on, you guys are going to have to forgive me. We're used to Teams in our company, so this Zoom thing's all new to us. So just give us a moment.
No worries, no worries.
Right, there we go. Okay, share. All right, I think we're on.
Yes.
Okay, right. Niall, so
Yeah, okay.
I think you want to take it away.
Let's take it away. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for letting Jensen Hughes present to everybody here. We're a new up and coming company within the Qatar market. So it's a pleasure really to present to all you guys this evening. Let's move on, Kev. Just to go through the agenda for this evening, some questions to make you think at the start. The cost of fire safety, which Ahmed touched on a few moments ago, and it really is colossal worldwide at the minute. Everybody knows a disaster that's happened down through the years. Who we are, Jensen Hughes, some fire and life safety details you need to look for, and fire and life safety culture, some health and safety stuff at the end, and obviously Q&A to finish with. Okay, Kev. So let's start with a polling question. First of all, do you have a fire extinguisher in your home, in your accommodation, and do you know how to use it? It's a basic question.
Okay, guys, so for this one, if you could just, for choice one, if you could just put a yes, and that's yes, and choice two is a no. Let's see how people are with their fire safety perception here.
And the key question is, do you know how to use it?
Absolutely.
I mean, most of us know we have it, but have you ever used it? Do you know how to use it? If there was a fire in your home, would you be confident in using it?
We've got 11 responses.
11, and it's all everybody. We've a lot of firefighters in the audience here tonight, Kev.
9% of people have participated.
Okay.
Okay, so people would feel comfortable. Awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one.
Move on to the next one there. So 100% of people there said that they would be, they have a fire extinguisher and they wouldn't know how to use it. Okay, moving on to poll two.
A little bit more confidence then, Kev. Okay, so number two, Kev.
Okay,
do you have a fire alarm in your accommodation? And are you confident, not only do you have a fire alarm in your accommodation, but are you confident that it's working? I mean, that's the most important thing. Are you confident that it will save your life maybe one day?
Now the polls are coming in.
People are being more honest this time, Kev.
I think we only got 11 results on the last one, Niall. I think there was something wrong with the polling, but this one seems to be a bit more truthful. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I think we can all look up, see a smoke detector or heat detector within our room, but are we confident that it's working is the key question. And
yeah, that's something we're going to come on to
so
and touch about later.
Yeah, so we're 50-50, Kev. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Are we still, hold on, there's still some votes coming through.
Still coming in. All right,
okay, so we've nearly everybody voting here. Okay.
Hovering around 50-50. Okay, that's interesting.
Okay. So let's move on to the question number 3.
Sorry, I forgot to skip the questions on. Right, the next one should be.
Okay, so do you know your primary and your secondary egress routes from your accommodation, from your home, from your villa? Now, the key one here is you know your way in and your way out, but what if your primary access route or egress route is blocked? Do you know your alternative? And that's what this question is getting at. Do you know your alternative means of egress? I'll be honest. So most of us do. In most apartment buildings, I live here on the Pearl, we've 2 stairs. So we do know that there's an alternative there. But in villas, is there bars on your windows? I mean, it's something for you to check when you go home.
Still though, now 10% of people are concerned with that. That's an interesting statistic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys, moving on to the final polling question.
Okay. Do you have a sprinkler system in your home, your accommodation, and are you confident that it's working? Oh, we've more honesty here, Kev. Okay. So I think the key question is, are we confident that it's working? Are we confident it's being maintained? Everybody knows in the Middle East that there can be issues maintaining systems.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Do you want me to finish that one there, Niall?
Yep.
So most people are saying no. Okay.
Most people are saying no. So we've gotten more honest as the polling questions have continued, Kev.
More like what we kind of expected, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, let's
I'm gonna
end the
end that
polling
now.
there. So that was
And
just
we'll move on.
a nice kickoff to get everybody engaged and have a think about what we're talking here tonight, because it's really important and could save your life one day. Okay, so let's move on. So in the US, between 1980 and 2019, if you look at the fatalities from fire, injuries from fire, and these are just the reported ones in NFPA, and you can find it on the link below, and the millions of dollars worth of damage. And this, of course, is just what's being reported. Obviously, this is only a percentage of what actually happens, because not all of incidents are reported, not all injuries are reported, and not all damage is reported. So let's move on, Kev. So why is fire safety so important? Obviously, back in 2012, and that's what brought me to Qatar, was the Bellagio incident, where 19 people died, and obviously there was the triplets, the Kiwi triplets that died, which really enforced the regulations, and Qatar Civil Defence really upped their game from that point. There's other big fire incidents we had more recently, the Grenfell Tower, of course, which has led to huge changes in British standards moving forward. The MGM Grand Fire, which shaped some of the NFPA codes and standards, and the Shanghai Fire back in 2010. So we see why it's so important. People die, and it costs a lot of money. This is actually a picture from, last year we had a fire during construction in West Bay. It wasn't reported, but this is one of the pictures that was circulating social media at the time. Nobody lost their life, but there was downtime, there was construction costs, and because fire systems aren't installed during construction, generally there's nothing there. That's the problem, because there was huge amount of damage here, and yeah, it really cost time. And this was one of the buildings that was supposed to be open for the World Cup, which actually is going to be delayed. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so presenting this evening, obviously, is myself. You've Kevin, who you've just seen. You've Murad as part of the team, and you've Amir as part of our Jensen Hughes team here in Qatar. And myself, I've been in Qatar for the last 10 years. I've been involved in many of the signature projects, not just for the World Cup. I've been involved in 4 World Cup stadia, involved in 2 of the metro, airport extension, number of high-rise, and a lot of the really cool projects that are happening here in Qatar. I was in oil and gas in Rasgas, or Qatar Gas as it is now, for 2 years on the Barzan plant, and I like to think that I've helped shape fire safety in Qatar for the past decade or so. I'm from Ireland, so I hope you can understand what I'm saying. I'm trying to keep it as slow as possible, so everybody can understand what I'm saying. So anyway, let's move on to Kevin. Maybe do a quick introduction of yourself, then Murad, then Amir.
No worries, mate. Yeah, so I'm Kevin. I've been here for, it'll be 17 years in about 20 days. I started life out on the Pearl Shell GTL plant up in Ras Laffan during the construction phase, and then moved over into the Rasgas, well, what was Rasgas, in the trading center, which is where I met Niall. And I worked there in behavioral safety, training, safety systems, statistics, all the fun, engaging stuff that we do as safety people. And then moved over into offshore fabric maintenance on oil and gas with a rope access company. And we did, I was the regional manager for that, safety manager. I had 500 guys hanging off oil rigs at any one time across the region, which was a little bit stressful. And then we had, I moved over to work with the Jensen Hughes team to basically support them with their behavioral aspects and building the safety business within Jensen Hughes locally and within the region as well. So yeah, that's a quick intro to me. Murat,
Great,
do you want to
thanks,
give a
Kev.
quick intro?
All right.
Oh, must be
Murat, are
a
you there?
technical problem.
Hi, this is Amir.
Amir.
I'll go ahead and just in case Murat's audio is not working. My name is Amir Stazadeh. I've been a fire engineer with Jensen Hughes for about a year and a half. Previous to that, I worked for a company called Arab in the UK, and I've been working with Nile for almost 2 years, and I'm really, really happy to be in Qatar working on lots of wonderful and very complex projects.
Great, thanks, Amir. Mord, are you with us, or will we move forward?
I think he's not here.
Okay, let's move forward. Okay, so Jensen Hughes is who we represent this evening, and who we represent in Qatar. We set up the office March of last year, I believe, on St. Patrick's Day, which is an eventful day as an Irishman. But Jensen Hughes have been involved primarily in fire protection for 80 plus years. What sets us apart really is we have some of the best guys in fire protection and specialist engineering throughout the planet. What sets us apart is our knowledge, our expertise. We're on NFPA boards, we're on Society of Fire Protection Engineering boards. Really, when it comes to fire and life safety, there's nothing we can't do. And really that's what sets us apart. So let's move on, Kev.
Sorry, wrong way.
So what we do, right? We've about 60% of our business is fire and life safety, and that's what everybody knows us for. But we have branched out over the past 20 years. We've acquired companies, we've branched out, we've moved into process safety. We're working with Qatar Gas in the North Field. We're branched into geotechnics. We work on with Qatar Petroleum a number of cool projects up in Ras Laffan at the minute. We do specialist security engineering. We do forensic investigations. We're doing some fire investigations for QP at the minute. They had some recent fires in some of their facilities, and we're supporting them with that. And we do some environmental. I have a meeting in Madrid in the morning with a company called Technicas with some environmental work in the North Field. Okay, Kev. So yeah, so why Jensen Hughes? So locally we have at any one time 10 to 15 engineers in our local office here in Lusail. Worldwide, we have 1,400, I think it's 1,500 now, employees, engineers, some of the best in their field that can support you with whatever problem that you have, or whatever issue you have, or whatever design that you want to build into your building. We've 1,500 really smart guys that can support you with whatever you need in specialist consulting, in particular fire and life safety.
I just want to add there, Niall, as well. I mean, the one thing that really grabbed me with Jensen Hughes was that they're so specialist. The people in the States are so specialist. They actually have, most of them sit on the NFPA committees. And if I'm right, our chairman sits on the board now.
Yeah, Roger Rohr.
Yeah,
He's chair of the NFPA board. He's our CEO, and he's chair of the NFPA board as well.
So it's a pretty cool, we've got some serious fire knowledge coming, into the meeting and into the company.
Yeah, and what we are, we're specialists. We don't do run-of-the-mill engineering. Really, when you have issues, when you have problems, that's where we come in. We can come in with this slide. We can come in at any stage, from before a building, before its inception, at early design stage, through to all the way through the design process, all the way through to training stage and inspection stage after a building is built. We can come in, and if you have problems, inspect and design for rectification as well. The next slide, please, Kev. Okay, so now we get to the kind of, we've given you a sales pitch on Jensen Hughes. So now we'll come to the, it has to be done, right? So next we come to fire and life safety in Qatar, and we will kind of, we do get into kind of nitty gritty in fire and life safety, but we'll kind of keep it as dumbed down as possible for the wider audience as well. So we'll talk about law and regs, the Qatar civil defense regs, fire safety, building design, fire stopping, which is really important, and fire strategy reports, which every building should have, and then some fire modeling and fire engineering. Okay, so this is our bread and butter, the Qatar Civil Defence requirements. The latest version is 2015. Now, we have been told they are currently updating it, but we haven't received the update as yet. It's primarily based on NFPA with British standards thrown in. It was actually drafted by a Singaporean, quite a famous guy in fire circles here by the name of Paul Koo, who's a Singaporean. The Singaporean codes are a mishmash of American codes, NFPA, and the British standards. So it kind of makes it quite interesting when you're trying to apply two completely different codes to make a compliant building. So you'll see a lot of NFPA, but some British standard stuff thrown in as well. And QCD are going more towards NFPA these days. If you can find a clause in NFPA to make your building compliant, they will accept that. Okay. So NFPA, suite of codes and standards, there's a huge amount of them, and they cover every single aspect of life safety. There's nothing within NFPA that's not covered. You could spend days and weeks trawling through all of the different codes and standards. The ones that we particularly deal with are 101, which is your life safety code, your design code for egress, and it gives general requirements then on the specifics in relation to sprinklers, hose reels, fire alarm, etc. And the specifics then are NFPA 13 in sprinklers, 14 hose reel standpipes, and 72 in your fire detection and alarm systems. Incidentally, the codes below, Kev, let's just go back a slide, because the codes below, the NFPA 101 is back in 2009, I think it says there, every 3 years. So there's a committee in Maryland, I think it is, in the US, and they sit and all they do is live and breathe NFPA, and they change it every 3 years. So every code gets changed every 3 years, and they take comments. If there's something you see isn't right in the code, there's a whole committee to go to deliver to NFPA, and they will have a look, and basically the committee will review your comment, and then will incorporate it in the next session of the code, the next code version or not, depending on how much weight that your comment takes. Okay, next slide, Kev. Fire safety systems. So some examples of fire safety systems, and it's never a kind of a one-stop shop. It's a Swiss cheese model that if your sprinklers don't work, you have your fire alarm. If your suppression systems don't work, you have your fire hose reel. If they don't work, you have manual call points in your building. So it's a whole set of requirements that you have in your building, and generally it's based on if one doesn't work, you've lots and lots of backup. And the most important thing, obviously, is to suppress the fires, your sprinkler systems itself. You see fire pumps here in the middle. You've fire pump controller to the left. You have hydrant to the right. You've some elements of your fire detection alarm system and your sprinkler systems as well. Okay, let's move forward. So extinguisher types. When you inspect, we've just thrown this in as an example of when you inspect extinguishers. Extinguishers is the most fundamental part. And if we go back to the poll right at the start, I think, what did we have, Kevin? Was it 95% of people, or even more? I know there was only 11 votes, but most people were confident that they have extinguishers and they're trained how to use it. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it here, it's not as simple as you may think. You've 5 different classes of extinguishers. So is this extinguisher relative to the risk? A is generally solid combustibles. B is liquids, whether petrol or liquids and gases really. C is electrical equipment. D is combustible metals, and K is for kitchen fires. So it's really important that the extinguisher that you're about to use, that you check it, is it compatible to the risk? So what other things that you need to look at? You look at the mounting height. No extinguisher should be on the floor. It should always be 4 inches from the ground, because you can get people cleaning with chemicals or that would eat away at the cylinder over time. There's been cases where chemicals, mops cleaning chemicals have actually eaten away at the cylinder and affected it a lot. It's lost its integrity over time. Pressure gauge reading, obviously you should always check the pressure gauge. You need to know whether there's pressure in something that you're about to use. Safety seals, everything really extinguishes should have safety seals and tamper, so you know it hasn't been used previously. It should be easily accessed, and you should really, your whole staff really should be trained how to use it. As a minimum, the fire wardens should be trained how to use it. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So building design. So this is kind of my area of expertise and something that I've been involved in Qatar and in my whole career in designing buildings. And the most important thing that you look at is, first of all, you see site access, that you can get the fire brigade in. And secondly, you can get everybody out. And if you design to get everybody out and design to get the fire brigade in, that's most of the battle, to be perfectly honest with you. You then look at your fire compartmentation within the building to make sure the fire doesn't spread within the building. And that will relate back to whether you have sprinklers or not, your compartment sizes. You look at your actual linings within your building. There was a Stardust fire in Ireland back in 1981. And I think it was 59 people lost their lives, or 57 people lost their lives when there was carpet tiles actually on the walls, and the fire ravaged through the nightclub in a matter of minutes, and a lot of people lost their lives because of it. So you cannot put carpet on walls, and it's as simple as that, is making sure you have the right products and are used in the right way. And that's really important. So when you look at Qatar Civil Defence approvals, pretty much everything that you put into your building needs to be Qatar Civil Defence approved within the last 2 years. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So yeah, so here's some examples of your egress routes, and your egress routes are really, really important because I mean, anybody that looked at the September the 11th attacks or any kind of disaster that's happened, have people been able to get out of the building? And if not, why not? And escape routes are generally great places to store things, to store combustibles, and it's the worst thing you can do. In the MGM Grand fire that we looked at the start, there was combustible stored in the stairs, and everybody rushed to the stairs, and the fire ravaged through the stairs, so they rushed to their deaths in the stairs. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide, Kev. Okay, so who here? Okay, so if we look at fire stopping, so what are we trying to do? We're trying to stop a fire from spreading throughout a building. And there's a number of companies that do that, and specialist contractors in Qatar that specialize in plugging holes, basically, because if you have even a pinhole, it's going to, the smoke within the fire is going to spread to the next room. So here we see some great examples. And Kevin, do you think these are good examples of how to fire stop?
Well, I was going to ask everybody else, if everybody does everybody have the reaction button on their screen with like the thumb up and stuff? If you guys think this is good practice, just give us a thumbs up on the screen, and let's see what comes up. I'll give you a couple of seconds to sort that out.
Yeah. And I mean, Amir and Laura will let you know we see this kind of thing all the time.
Yeah. All right. There's not. Oh, there's a few.
Don't tell me there's thumbs up, Kev.
Okay. Right. But that's actually.
This is really bad practice, because you do not want to see any kind of gaps or holes, because the fire will penetrate them really, really quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, I've worked construction in over here, Niall, as well, and I think, you know, we all live in apartment blocks around the area. This is quite a common thing that you see, which is a bit worrying. Okay,
so let's move on to good examples. So what you have here is you see on the left side, you see a kind of a perfect seal. And even behind that, you will have like a fire shutter or a fire damper that will close, either an activation of the fire alarm, or there may be a fusible link that closes on heat of the damper. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So fire strategy report, and this is really important. it's something that we got involved in. We get involved in a lot of complex buildings and complex developments throughout Qatar, but every building should have a fire strategy report. And that's a really important point to note, because Amir will tell you, I don't know how many times we come in near the end of a project and there's no fire strategy report for the building. And this tells you basically the fundamentals of the building. What is the occupancy classification? And what is the egress strategy? What is the building made of? How long can it stay up in the event of fire? What is the type of fire alarm system that you're putting into the building? How are we suppressing a fire now in the event of a fire? Where are the risks? What do we need to do in certain areas of the building? And so this is really important, because every building is inherently different. The risks are inherently different, and we need to look at the risks in the building and how do we address those in a compliant manner that the Qatar Civil Defence will approve and will be in compliance with NFPA as well. So it addresses basically, as I went to before, how do you get everybody out in a fire, and how do you get the fire brigade in a compliant manner? Okay, so let's move into kind of, this is a stadium which shall remain nameless in Qatar, but this is an example of what gets submitted to Qatar Civil Defence. In addition to the fire strategy report, you have a fire policy drawing. So on the fire policy drawing, it shows the escape routes of how you get everybody out, what the fire compartment ratings are within the building. You'll see little bits of red, little bits of blue. They will denote either 1 hour or 2 hour fire ratings. So basically within that enclosure, a fire will be kind of contained within that enclosure for a minimum of 1 hour and 2 hours. And that goes back to what the actual walls and doors and dampers, etc., are made from. And that gives everybody time to get out in the event of fire and get the fire brigade in. Generally for the stadia, everything was designed on an 8-minute evacuation time. So if you look at, it kind of goes back to the Green Guide in UK, but when you're in a stadium, hopefully next year during the World Cup, you need to check your exits and have a look, can I get out of here in 8 minutes? Am I comfortable? Because that is what it has been designed for. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So this is again from one of the famous stadiums here in Qatar, which remain nameless. But what we design, and when we get into the nitty gritty of it for you fire engineers there, is we look at CFD, which is computational fluid dynamics, and we model a fire, and this is a fire in the basement. So from where we look at, what we do is we take it back to first principles. Well, what's going to go on fire in these spaces? Well, we look at, well, what's our worst credible fire load? It's probably a heavy goods vehicle. So we look at a size of fire of a heavy goods vehicle. We input it into the model. We build the model of the stadium, and then we run the software. So we look at it from the software. Then we look at what the worst cases of where the fire will be. The worst case here was dead center. So then what you're seeing is the fans, which have switched on. The fire is modeled in the middle. The fans have switched on, and they're now blowing the smoke and hot gases down, south and out. So the reason they do that is because the fire brigade, the civil defense, will attack the fire from the north. So they're not going to be, there's not going to be any hot gases or smoke in their way as they go and fight the fire. So we look at smoke visibility and temperature. You look at the visibility, which is 10 meters. Anything below 10 meters is non-compliant. You look at the temperature of the smoke, which is generally going to be 60 degrees. Anything above 60 degrees is non-compliant. And that is at a height below head height. So it's probably a lot to take on at the minute, but it's kind of the nitty gritty of what we get into. Some people will understand it, others won't. So let's move on, Kev. So this is some pretty cool software that we use, and this is a famous airport in the region. And what we do is we've modeled a fire downstairs, we've modeled an alarm, and we've modeled people who are in an airport, so they're not familiar. They're going to be awake, they're going to be generally alert and generally ambulant. So we've modeled an alarm, and you can see them now moving towards the exits. So what we do is we model a fire and we look at the time at which conditions become untenable. And then we see, does everybody get out in a time when conditions become untenable? In other words, when the fires overcome the people that are in the space.
Niall, just to add there, the thing that really interested me on that one was how long it took people to actually react. Because I'm assuming that when when this video started, the fire alarm starts, and now people are just, you know, people aren't really reacting to the situation, which is something I know we're going to come on to in a little bit. But it's quite interesting with the perception of risk when it comes to a fire alarm as well.
Yeah, there's lots of triggers, Kevin, and the main one is people perceiving themselves in danger. At the start of the fire, they're not going to see, there's not going to be much smoke logging, so they're not really going to perceive themselves in danger. And they could be at a shop, they could have bought a meal at a restaurant, so their trigger is not to leave a meal they've just paid $20 or $30 for. They're going to get, they're going to probably wait for a trigger of somebody else to move first, and then they will move.
The really interesting bit on this for me is if you look at both the left and the right sides here from the behaviors, you can see the bottlenecks that are happening as well.
Yeah.
Right. It's quite interesting.
So then you have to look at, well, are the exits wide enough for the amount of people, the worst case credible load of people that we're going to have in that space?
Yeah. Right. Shall I move on?
All of that will be incorporated in the fire engineering design of the building. Yeah, let's move on.
Cool. Okay, so this is actually moving on to a little bit more of what I do within the company with the safety culture and the fire safety culture. So, you know, Niall and the team are very technical when it comes to, you know, their ability to be able to predict fires and control fires and prevent fires. And what we're starting to look at now a little bit as well is, as we just discussed on the last slide, is how do people react to the fire alarms? And let's face it, let's be honest. We've all been in shopping malls, we've all been in hotels, we've all been in office blocks, and the fire alarm goes off and we don't react. Okay, and it's a mindset shift. I think when that fire alarm goes off, we should really all be exceptionally alert, because it's there for a reason to basically warn us that our life could potentially be in immediate danger. And so we'll come on to that on the next slide, but just to give you an idea of what we're doing here, we're looking at culture development, we're looking at management systems, we look at the fire safety aspects of risk assessments and incident investigations. And one of the things that really gets me ticking as a safety professional is, why did somebody do what they did? Or why didn't they do what they should have done? Which is that's a really interesting perception. And we also look at process safety and safety training in a variety of different industries as well: oil and gas, manufacturing, healthcare, commercial airports, etc. But the one question that I wanted to, and we've just about wrapped up the presentation, but the one thing that I really wanted to leave you guys with tonight was, why do people react or don't react the way they do when it comes to fire safety? Now, we're all safety professionals. You know, as part of the IOSH group, we're all safety professionals, but I can guarantee you that if a fire alarm went off in a shopping mall, you would probably second guess it. Okay, and that's a really interesting dynamic to why we actually do that. So what we're trying to do as well is we're trying to understand fire behavior responses. And I know Niall's got something to say about this at the end of this slide, because I know it was something that he studied a lot in when he was doing his master's. But why do people not react? Is it because we don't perceive it as being a risk, because a mall or a hotel or an office block is perceived as a safe place? You know, and bad things don't happen in safe places. So we have this innate perception of we're going to be okay. Nobody ever thinks that they're going to be involved in a serious accident like happened in Villaggio, for example. And everybody always perceives that, well, I can't see the hazard being the smoke and the fire. I've got a lot of time to react to this it doesn't matter. As Niall said before, I'm going to finish my dinner that I've paid for, and then I'm going to exit from the mall. And I'm really interested from a behavioral safety person of what sparks that thinking. And is it because we don't hear the fire alarm very often? But then I think, well, if we heard the fire alarm all the time, then I would expect it to be, I would expect a complacency. But because we don't hear it all the time, why is the complacency there? And it's something that I want to work with Niall and the team on. I'm trying to understand that a lot more going forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Kev. I think it's something because you don't see it every day. But
correct.
You don't see fires every day. You don't see dangerous fires every day. Definitely not. People don't perceive themselves in danger, but they do hear the fire alarm go off very often. And if you don't perceive yourself in danger, you're going to react to triggers. You'll react to the alarm going off. You might not. If somebody comes in a high-vis vest, will you react to that and tells you that we have a fire, you better get out? If you see smoke, then you're starting to perceive yourself in danger. But if you have a fire alarm that goes off all the time because of the high humidity in the region or whatever else, are you really going to react to that trigger? You're probably not. But then, yeah.
Sorry.
So it's something that I'm interested in. I did a lot of study on it, my master's, and there's varying levels that people will actually evacuate a building. Now, I always tell my wife, I say, look, let's get our passports. I don't care if it's a false alarm. Let's take our passports, take the kids. Let's go down to reception. If it's a false alarm, what's the problem? No problem. But if it is a real fire, and there's plenty of them in the region, let's make sure you get your family out and take your passports.
And get out to a safe place and
Exactly.
treat everyone as a real event, because you never know. It's like everything with emergency response. We plan for every eventuality, and we test for every eventuality, and we hope it never happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And if something like Grenfell can happen in the UK only recently in the last couple of years, the next one, as you know, is around the corner. We got to make sure that we're covered.
And the other one that I just want to touch on now while we're here, and I know we don't have a slide on it, but it's something that's happened in my friendship group recently, is we've had 2 friends that have had AC fires over the summer. And, about keeping the air conditioners maintained, that they're running pretty much 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Keep them clean, keep them maintained, get the engineer in to double check them if something's not right, and just make sure that you can get your family out of your accommodation if you have your family here, or your exit routes. And the last question I've got on the slide was, how is your culture when it comes to fire? Have a look at your own personal risk tolerance. And it's something that especially, well, nobody really does, but even as a safety professional, we don't do it often enough. Even as safety professionals, we get complacent to risk. And have a think about, after we've done the call, have a walk around your accommodation or your home, or your office block tomorrow, and just go, what, if something happened, can I get out? Like Niall was saying, are the exits blocked? Have they got copy paper stored in the exits? The combustibles that are in your exit routes in your homes, can you move those? Do you have combustible items sitting under air conditioners? So if the air conditioner does go on fire, will something around it or underneath it directly catch on fire? And just going around and reassessing those risks in those perceived safe places that we go to, where everything's under control and everything's safe. Niall, do you have anything you'd like to add to that, mate?
No, I think you're right. It goes back to your own fire plan back home. If your main way out is blocked, can you get an alternative? And if you're in a villa, you got to make sure that you get out to your windows or alternative exits, and in your apartment blocks, you will have an alternative stairs as well. But it goes back to, are we confident that everything, our fire alarm system, our sprinkler system, that everything is actually working in our building? How confident can we be?
Absolutely.
But I think we'll finish up there, Kev. To be
I think,
perfectly
well, yeah,
honest with you.
there's,
I thank everybody for your time this evening, and look, we'll open the floor to questions.
Valentine. Valentine. Well, thank you, Neil and Kevin, for this interesting presentation. I think one session definitely will not be enough, for the topic, to be covered. However, we just want to kind of launch this, and then we'll definitely have like more sessions coming in the future to kind of dive a little bit deeper on this important topic. So, Valentine, if you are there, please, can we have the questions?
Ahmed, we have a hand up. We have Abdul Rahman who has his hand up.
Oh, yeah, okay. Abdurrahman, can you unmute and ask your question, please?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to take a minute and thank Ahmed and the other guys that made the presentation. This is my first IOSH session that I've attended, and I'm also an industry professional, but also I'm recently finishing my education at the College of the North Atlantic. Just wanted to thank also Miss Pauline, who's also the chair of the Occupational Safety and Health, who invited all the students as well to join this meeting. I also thought at the beginning of the session there was a whole discussion about how Jensen Hughes actually are dealing with top of the line industry experts in fire and safety, and part of what I do is also in the levels of human development. We work with interns and students, and I wanted to see how we can utilize the expert knowledge, skills, and competencies that you guys carry at Jensen Hughes, but also at other consultation firms for the students at CNAQ or perhaps anywhere else in Qatar that would like to gain a transfer of knowledge and also, excel at their professional careers using your abilities and your mentorship. If there is an opportunity as such that is available at Jensen or at any other company available that is part of the IOSH.
Sure. Abdulrahman, nice to meet you, first of all, and thank you for your question. Please feel free to reach out to me offline. It's no problem. We can come to some arrangement or whatever. But I'll leave my details with Ahmed and Kevin, and please feel free to reach out to me offline.
If anybody would like to reach out to Neil or Kevin, feel free to communicate with us, and then we'll definitely make the arrangements for you.
Okay, thanks, Ahmed. Sorry, everyone, I had a problem with my mic. Now I'm back. I've got a few questions from the audience for our speakers. The first question is from a colleague of ours is saying, what is your suggestion for designing firefighting systems? Kevin.
I'm going to leave that one to Niall. That's exactly his area of expertise. So I think he's way more qualified to answer that than I am.
Comply with NFPA 13, Kevin. in a nutshell. But what you need to do is you need to look at the risk in your building. If you have a higher risk building, you're going to need to put more water on the fire, basically. Lower risk building, you may not need sprinklers at all. You may just need hose reels. You may just need a standpipe. So it really depends on the risk within your building. And the risk in your building, your commodity that you've stored, whether it's, I don't know, high bay warehouse or whatever, that will dictate the type of protection that you will need to your building. I hope that answers the question in a nutshell, but it really depends what you have in your building and what your risks are. And from that, you design accordingly. The higher risk, the more water you need to put on the fire. Or if you've something that's not compatible with water, then you need to think about something else, an inert gas or powder or something else, CO2 or something else.
Okay. And then I have another question again. Who should develop the fire prevention plan if the health and safety team are not involved in the design?
Who should design the fire
Who
prevention?
should develop the fire prevention plan if health and safety team are not involved in the design?
So this goes back to the planning stage, the Qatar Civil Defence planning stage. And what you need is a fire strategy report for each building. So in the fire strategy report at the planning stage, which gets submitted to Qatar Civil Defence, at this stage, that looks at all the fire prevention measures in your building, from means of egress to get everybody out to get the civil defence in, and the type of suppression system that you're going to have in your building. So that gets dictated at planning stage, and we're involved in a number of these key projects in Qatar where we're involved at the planning stage to make sure that all the correct firefighting systems, fire alarm system, egress routes, etc., are actually being designed into the building.
Okay, I hope that answers the question. There's another question here. What measures are in place to protect incapacitated patients when fire breaks out in large hospitals or in healthcare centers?
That's a really good question. So at planning stage, again, you got to look at the type of people that are going to be in your building. If it's a hospital, are they ambulant? Are they awake? Or is it somebody going to be on an operating table? So you've got to design accordingly. So you got to look at your type of suppression systems. Again, you're going to look at the type of evacuation, like mattress evacuation. So you've got to train all your staff to make sure that you've mattress evacuation, you've wheelchair evacuation. Sometimes in a hospital, it's just a matter of moving everybody from one compartment that's on fire to an adjoining compartment but that's fire separated, to an adjoining compartment where everybody is safe and has 1 hour or 2 hours separation between the compartment that's on fire and the adjoining compartment. That then allows the civil defense time to fight the fire and extinguish the fire if the suppression system hasn't extinguished the fire.
Okay, and then I've got a couple of more questions. For a fire room, as per design, what is the systematic startup of the various pumps? I'm not sure what this means. Okay, so the guy's asking what's the system in place to start up the various pumps for a fire room as per the fire plan design?
A fire room. So if you took, for example, a hotel room that was on fire, there's in NFPA 72, which is the smoke detector, the fire alarm code, there's certain time frames that you need to notify people. Like in a hotel, you don't want everybody to evacuate a hotel in a false alarm. But then you got to balance that. If you've a confirmed fire, you want to make sure that the fire floor is evacuated, and perhaps the floor above and the floor below. So you want to have a staged evacuation depending on the type of building that you have. If you have a single retail unit and that's on fire, you want to get everybody out. But if you have a hotel that's on fire, maybe you only need to evacuate the fire floor, the floor below, the floor above. So you have a staged evacuation. So it really depends on your scenario.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we've got more questions coming in now because people get more interested as as the answers begin to flow. Now, Guy has asked, what are the fire guidelines to be followed for a building under construction?
Okay, so Qatar Civil Defence have a number of codes for buildings under construction. You also have NFPA 241, which is for buildings under construction as well. And we've actually been involved in a couple of these projects here in Qatar where they know they have a number of fires during buildings under construction. So you need to put, what Qatar Civil Defence Code actually says, they do have construction documents for buildings under construction. They do say that you need to, as you build up through the buildings, as you add floor on floor on floor, the fire systems, as a minimum, the standpipe should be actually operational. So you can actually plug a hose in and fight a fire. And now it isn't always done, and it's wishful thinking in a lot of projects. But you need to look at how you get everybody out at construction, all your workers out, and how you get the fire brigade in. So there needs to be a separate plan during construction stage to make sure everybody gets out, the fire brigade gets in, and you don't lose half your building because your fire systems aren't installed at that stage. So there is a document that was actually, there's the NFPA 241, which is used generally by the civil defense here, but they do have, the civil defense do have their own document as well, which isn't as much used because it's extremely onerous.
Okay, and then one more question. Guys, sorry if I don't take all your questions. I think most of the questions revolve around the same subject. One more question, I think this might be the last, is
Sure.
can we have a generic fire strategy for the whole complex, or individual, or rather than having for individual buildings?
What do you mean by complex? Would you mean like a
No,
mall or a development?
yeah, something like a mall. Is it going to be a generic fire risk assessment or fire strategy, or do we
Right.
need to have for the individual compartments of that entire building?
It's going to be both. I was involved in the design of Doha Festival City, and for the individual retail units and the individual occupancies, you'll need an individual fire strategy for each. So within each of those units, you have a proper fire alarm system, you have a proper risk. You can get everybody out, you can get the civil defense in, but how that feeds then into the wider mall strategy, then you'll have a smoke control system, you'll have a mass evacuation system for the whole mall itself. So what you'll try and do is make sure that the individual units, if they go on fire, the fire is contained. But then there's a wider strategy for evacuation of the mall, for suppression, for getting the fire brigade in, getting the civil defense in as well. So it's actually both. You need to look at individually, but you need to look at the global as well.
And the most important thing, you need to test it. You need to be sure that it's been
Absolutely,
tested. Yeah, it's running, it's effective, and then most likely the chances of a failure, it's quite slim. Now, I've got one more question. Sorry about this.
It's okay.
There's a guy that was asking, what are the actions against management if they fail to comply with the fire prevention system?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that isn't enforced enough, and it really, I mean, you're breaking the law. If you don't maintain your fire alarm system, you're breaking the law. And if something happens then and you haven't maintained your fire alarm system, you're going to jail. And after Villaggio, everybody got held up in court, from the civil defense, from the security guards. Everybody got hauled up in court. And there was a number of things that, I'm not going to go into it here, but there's a number of things that went wrong. And everybody got hauled up in court in front of the judge and had to explain themselves. And that's what you have to treat it like the next disaster is going to happen on your watch.
Absolutely. And for the audience, I need to thank Kevin and his team, and then I'll hand you back to Ahmed to wrap it up. But the most important thing lies in the fact that, yes, people are responsible for ensuring that the fire prevention system works, but we owe it a duty to ourselves to be able to check, because you don't want a situation where, like the Villaggio incident happened. We lost 19 people, and these are not just people, these are people with families and dependents and so on. So yeah, take care of yourself. Watch over yourself. Be sure that the systems are working. Ask questions. Don't just look at it and say, well, the management owe it a responsibility to protect you, but you also owe it a responsibility to yourself to make sure that you don't put yourself in harm's way. Thanks, Kevin. Back to Ahmed, please.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Niall, Kevin, Murat, and Amir, for this interesting session. And definitely, as I said, the issue is a kind of a broad issue that need to be covered, like in really in depth. We have learned a lot from different incidents that has happened before. Oil and gas, we have Piper Alpha, we have all these kind of incidents that we keep tell people that we need to make sure that we have a proper kind of arrangements and plans in place to ensure that people are safe. Thank you very much, all our IOSH members, students from College of North Atlantic, Pauline, thank you very much. Thank you, Catherine, for your support. And looking forward to have the team again, from Jensen Hughes with us here in IOSH. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, everybody.
Have a very good evening. Thank you.
You too. You too.
Thanks, Ahmed. Thank you, everybody,
All right.
for taking part.
Thank you so much.